Thank you, George. Minister Kirameas, Minister Janse, ladies and gentlemen. For me as a Swedish ambassador, it's a true pleasure to stand here and see all the representatives from the Greek and the Swedish business community gathered here today. We are here to explore the business opportunities in Greece. That we can do that is very much thanks to the impressive, I would say unique progress that Greece has been doing in its economic development over the last few years. And this development continues. We could see yesterday that Deputy Prime Minister Hatzidakis talked about 7 points to still continue to improve the business environment, all these things that are important for us that are gathered here today. There is a saying that is often used in events like this. May you live in interesting times. May you live in interesting times. I did the Googling or the AI or whatever you're supposed to do, and nobody knows really where this comes from. It says, normally it's said to be a Chinese curse. I don't know if this resonates with you or not, but let's leave it at that. But the times are really interesting, and I think we all know what the challenges are. We're going to talk about them later. We have a war going on in this part of the world, in Ukraine, a war where a great power is trying to change the boundaries by military force, something we haven't seen in our lifetime, at least. I was mentioning China. It brings us to the competitiveness issue, something that was on top of the agenda for our presidency in the European Union in 2023. It's still on the top of the agenda. We have an engagement by the United States, which is today and tomorrow very strong here in Greece. We have an impressive US delegation coming here. But there are still question marks over the long term about US engagement, and this is something that we also have to relate to. And of course, we have a very volatile environment next door in the Middle East. And we have, at the best, a very fragile peace agreement, and we don't know what the future beholds in that part of the world either. It's Greece. For Greece, this is the neighborhood, but I would say it's the neighborhood also for us in Sweden. It affects us. We are further geographically away from this, but it affects us directly and indirectly. And I would say if you bring all these things together, and I have now spent close to 40 years in diplomacy, international relations, and so on, and during this time I haven't seen anything that is comparable in terms of challenge, in terms of strategic implications that we are facing today. So this is, of course, something that's going to be talked about in the first panel in a few minutes. One effect that these challenges have on us is that it brings us closer together. And it brings also Sweden and Greece closer together. And we were talking about that over lunch just recently, how our heads of government, our prime minister, meets a lot, how they relate to each other, how they have the same approach to try to look for solutions, talk about solutions, very much the same mindset. And that is, of course, a very good basis for our bilateral relation. So we are talking about the opportunities. We're talking about that the energy sector. We have a delegation of Swedish companies in the energy sector with us here today. Also other companies that has traveled to join us here. We have also a new area of cooperation, which is defense. And I had the privilege of sitting in a few weeks ago when our chief of defense, the highest military officers in our two countries, met. And they haven't done that for 15 years, actually. So that's an indication of something. And they immediately identified 5, 6, 7 points to follow up, for their staffs to talk about and discuss. I will not run the whole list, but I will just take one example, which is underwater infrastructure. We have had some challenges with that in the Baltic Sea. You know, these electricity cables, pipelines, everything that goes under sea. We have, together with our NATO partners, dealt with this, introducing the so-called Baltic Sentry mission, which has had an effect, obviously, on these things. But the Baltic Sea and the Aegean Sea has many similarities as a marine environment. And this is one example, just one example, where we can exchange experience and where we can work together for mutual benefit. I will not keep you longer. I will just finish by thanking George Yorkapoulos and the Swedish Hellenic Chamber of Commerce for organizing this, bringing us together today. I must say I admire the spirit that the Chamber has of always raising the level of ambitions and being a cornerstone of our bilateral relations. So thank you very much for that, and thank you for listening. Efkaristopoli.